Where we.
Okay, good evening. And thank you for joining us. I'm Kate Markert. I'm Executive Director here at Hillwood Estate Museum and Gardens in Washington, D.C. I know I don't have to tell you that because you're sitting in front of me, but we have a lot of people who aren't. We are so pleased to have audiences joining us both here in the theater, but also by Zoom. And I know those of you who've been here before know what I'm going to say next, which is be sure you have silenced all of your devices. Yes, we can have, yeah, we don't want the speaker's device going off either. For those of you at home, you may submit your questions via the Q&A function in Zoom whenever they cross your mind, and we'll get to as many as we can from both locations at the end. And for those of you here in the theater, they'll come around with a microphone so that the people on Zoom can hear. So if you'll just wait for the microphone before you ask your burning question, that'll be great. I would like to take this moment to acknowledge those who've made the additional commitment to support Hillwood as members of our Legacy Council. Many, many thanks for your thoughtful planning to help ensure a vibrant future for Hillwood. Tonight's lecture is the final part of the series highlighting our current exhibition, From Exile to Avant-Garde, The Life of Princess Natalie Paley. This exhibition is on view through January 4th. I know there are a couple of you in the audience who haven't seen it yet. You need to go see it. It's fabulous. And those of you who have seen it, you have to come back and bring a friend. Okay? Got the assignment? Thank you. And I also hope that you will join us in a few weeks for their 13th annual Frederick J. Fisher Lecture, which is going to feature Meryl Gordon. And she's an award-winning journalist and tenured NYU journalism professor and the author of The Woman Who Knew Everyone, The Power of Pearl Mesta, Washington's Most Famous Hostess. It is a wonderful book, and it will be exciting to have Meryl Gordon tell us all about the larger-than-life Pearl Mesta, who was, of course, a friend of Marjorie Post. Course. I know, Louise, we all know. Yes. Now, tonight, we're very excited to hear from Kenneth Silver, who will talk about Paley, her home in Connecticut named Pebbles, and her influence on the burgeoning American fashion world. But before I hand over the mic, I wanted to share a bit about our speaker. Dr. Kenneth Silver is Silver Professor of Art History Emeritus, New York University, where he received his bachelor's degree. He received his MA and PhD at Yale and has taught there, as well as at Vassar and at Columbia. He's been the recipient of a National Endowment for the Humanities Fellowship and an American Council of Learned Societies grant. He's also been a Getty Research Institute visiting scholar and a Mellon Getty Fellow at the Phillips Collection. He's been around, this guy. He was a longtime contributing editor of Art in America, which of course is a very important art magazine, and adjunct curator of art at the Bruce Museum. More recently, he curated Jean Cocteau, The Juggler's Revenge. Its catalog published by Marsilio Arte. I can tell you that is a great book. It's really a wonderful book. In recognition of his contributions to the dissemination of art and culture of France, Silver was named Chevalier of the Order of Arts and Letters by the French government, just like Marjorie Post, in the spring of 2010. Now, please join me in welcoming Dr. Kenneth Silver to the podium.
Thank you, Kate. That's a lovely introduction. Let me say a few things. One is that I have an awful lot of slides. I mean, I have many, many slides, many too many slides. So I'm going to race right along. By the way, that has to be on that. That's got to be that bright because that's what you need for the Zoom. Is that right? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay. I should have brought sunglasses. was I going to say? Yes, so it does occur to me that, and I know we really have a strict time limit, that I will be using, you will hear terms like cubism, futurism, surrealism, etc. You know, typically I would tell you what all those things mean. I'm not going to do that. You're just going to have to like wing it with me, because I don't really mean this to be an art history lecture. I mean this to be a kind of cultural, social history lecture about, as you will see shortly, about all kinds of interesting happenings and goings on in Connecticut. And that means, in fact, that I can't really give you a prep course in art history. So please understand that. If you've got questions, I am happy to answer questions or take your comments at the end of my talk. That's just fine with me. So just let me, I've been told I really have to move. So just understand that that's what I'm going to be doing, and say, I don't know what the heck that means. Well, at the end, ask me or something. Okay? Thanks, folks. Sorry, there we go. By the way, that is, you'll hear about him shortly. That is the painter Arshil Gorky sitting in a house in Connecticut, and you will hear about that in short order. My own acquaintanceship with the name, the reputation of Natalie, excuse me if I just call her Natalie Paley, like she's related to William Paley from CBS. I know she's not, but just live with me, because I've been calling her that forever. So, but my connection more recently is that I borrowed this work from the Centre Pompidou. I mean, the original one. That you will see a very nice facsimile of this work in the show. It's a fantastic exhibition. If anyone here has not seen it, you've got to see it. It's a superb show, superb show. I really loved it. But at any rate, that's how I was aware of this. It's by Jean Cocteau. This is a collage by Jean Cocteau. That is the head, a photograph of Natalie Paley with a drawing by Jean Cocteau underneath it. And she's saying, you know, silence, I command you, silence, j'ordonne, etc. And Cocteau, like many people, was a bit obsessed with Natalie Paley. She was gorgeous. She was related to the Romanovs, etc. Hey, you know, how much do you need? Those two things were already enough, obviously. And I guess she was she was a cool customer, and that helps too. By the way, and that work was in this exhibition that Kate kindly mentioned to you. That was at the Peggy Guggenheim, Venice in 2024, at the time of the Biennale, and that work was in that show. And then my friend Amy Collins, and some of you were here for her talk about the best dressed list. Amy was the one who told me, do you know that Natalie Paley had a house in Connecticut called Pebbles? I said, did not know. I did not know. And there was a whole scene of kind of mostly theatrical people. That'll come up again in a moment. But I did not know that she had a house in Connecticut, in Fairfield on the water. And somehow or other we got talking, and she said, what would you think about doing a lecture in Washington for the exhibition about Natalie Paley? And I said, that sounds like a good idea. So let me say to you, by the way, the excuse, in a sense, is that Natalie Paley had a house in Connecticut. Here are some photographs from these albums of hers where you see Pebbles. That was the name of the house. If I'm not mistaken, wasn't that the daughter didn't the Flintstones have a daughter named Pebbles? I know I shouldn't be admitting that I know that, but I know that. Anyway, there was no such Flintstones or anything when they named their house that, obviously. By the way, and friends, who do you see here immediately right off? Deanna Vreeland, who had been editor of Vogue, and then I remember meeting her once. I was an intern at the Metropolitan Museum of Art when she was curating her shows at the Met, and somebody said, "This is Mrs. Vreeland. That's it." And then actually, come to think of it, then I met a few of her relatives, some in Aspen, Colorado, and now that I think about it, and one of her in-law relatives, works on Jean Cocteau. So recently, it just so happened Deanna Vreeland came up in another context. And if I keep saying things like this, I'll never get through this lecture. So let me keep going. At any rate, right, I'm not supposed to step away from this. I can't read it. Can you read it? It says Pebbles crowd with Natalie Paley and Jack Wilson, her husband, Deanna Vreeland, Membochet, George Ballantyne, Pavel Chelachev, Horst, Nikki de Gunsborg, Laurence Olivier, Vivian Lee, Noel Coward, and many others. So quite a scene at their house, mostly in the good weather. This is not Florida. That's another that's another scene. That's another world. But this is basically the summer. The spring, late spring, early fall, summer season in Connecticut. And it so happens that I did a show since I was a curator for 17 years in Connecticut at the Bruce Museum. At some point, I said, as I started to realize how many interesting figures lived in Connecticut, sometimes country houses, sometimes full-time houses, et cetera, at some point, I proposed that we do a show about modern art in Connecticut, and that's how that all came about. The show opened in actually only 6 months before the Cocteau show opened in Venice. So 2020, end of 2023, the show was up till the beginning of 2024. The Connecticut Modern Show. And that's going to be the basis of this. Now you say Connecticut Modern, huh? Like New Jersey Modern or you know what I mean? South Carolina Modern, like, yeah, we know about 5th century Athens and Periclean Athens, right? That's an art center. We know about 15th century, 14th century Florence, 16th century Florence, Paris. I mean, that's Modigliani, by the way. We know about 19th and early 20th century Paris, all legitimate art centers and places you've heard about. But by the way, and of course, and the French Riviera. Now, I should say to you this: I'm interested in these art scenes that no one has documented before. I like places. I'm very interested in places, especially if they're beautiful places. I have to be honest. Yeah. And in fact, when I did this show in 2000, and it's a book from MIT called Making Paradise, when I did that, I remember curators in Paris saying to me, really? You're doing a show about the Côte d'Azur? Please. I mean, they found it kind of unpleasant as an idea that this glamorous resort was also a place where people made art, a lot of art. I mean, a lot of art. And that's a bit of my idea that, just because people are partying somewhere doesn't mean that either the same people who are partying may be working the rest of the time, or while they're partying over there, you're working over here, etc. But I kind of am always excited when I'm able to show people that it's not just Paris and it's, not just Florence. There are all kinds of interesting places that become art centers for various reasons. For various reasons, that's another issue, right? And the reasons I would say are place, people, serendipity, and included in this is how and why a place becomes an art center, right? Just in case I'm aware of the time, I'm moving fast. And within serendipity, I would put politics as well, right? Because that's going to come up momentarily too. Let's start with place. By the way, most of the scenes you're going to see playing out here momentarily can be found somewhere on this map of Connecticut. I would say artists live primarily in Litchfield County and Fairfield County and Litchfield County, but they lived all around the state. And you'll be hearing about Hartford. You'll be hearing about the central part of the state as well, a few other, quite importantly, etc. So, and one of the points about place is that Connecticut, let's be honest, is right next to New York. If Connecticut had not been right next to New York, it's doubtful that there would have been. See, something's wrong.
Step over there.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Yeah. Yes, Ryan. I'm not supposed to move around. Sorry, I'm messing up. Zoom folks, I'm glad you're here, and I'm sorry if I'm making it hard for you. And anyway, yes. So the point is, you could have a place in Connecticut. If you were an artist and you had a gallery, you could drive to the city or get a train to the city and go see your gallery. You'll be hearing quickly about architecture and design toward the end of this lecture. If you've got an architectural firm or the design firms, it's convenient. So that's a big issue. Connecticut in particular had a couple of other virtues. One was that, unlike New Jersey, which continues to have major farming, Connecticut, which is very rocky, lost most of its farming over the course of the 19th century, which meant that lots of farms went up for sale over the course of the 19th century and early 20th century. You could get beautiful land, as long as you weren't trying to grow something on it, because it wasn't going to be so great. You could get really nice land at a very good price by the early 20th century. So Connecticut had a number of kind of things going for it. Number one, I think, is that it was near New York. Number two was that you could get yourself a nice piece of land inexpensively, etc. And then there is the biggest issue, which is people. And if there's any one person who is responsible for Connecticut becoming truly a center of creative endeavor, it was Alexander Calder. Now, most of you, I'm going to guess, know who Calder was. He was the son and the grandson of American sculptors. He was born in Philadelphia. He was raised mostly in Pasadena, California. But then, yes, anyway, and then was a young man in New York. Both, by the way, both his parents were artists. His mother was an artist too. Anyway, that is the house. Calder standing in front of the house in a funny outfit. He did lots of funny outfits. In a funny outfit, a house he bought, as I say. Oops, I'm not supposed to stand there. In front of his newly purchased Roxbury home with saw and shovel, and he bought the house with 18 acres for $3,500. Egad. Why does it matter that Calder went to Connecticut in 1933? Because he was the American art star in Paris. I don't know how many of you know this, but he was a star before he ever came back to New York. He did let me do this. He did his Calder Circus. He performed it in Paris and in New York. He was going back and forth on the ocean liners, performing in Paris and New York. He knew everybody. And he was a charming guy and a brilliant guy, and his work was amazing. So going to Connecticut meant a lot. Let me go backward now and say he didn't do it all by himself. On one of his transatlantic trips to do a circus in New York and in Paris. And if you don't know what the Calder Circus is, make it your business to find out. It's wonderful. The Whitney Museum owns what's all the things that are left from that circus. So quite wonderful. And there are great videos of him. He would perform the circus with all these little characters and such. On one of his trips, he met Louisa James on the ship the De Grasse. And by the way, these are the trunks in which he carried the circus. He would pack it up between New York and Paris, and he'd go back and forth across the Atlantic. I don't mean every week, but once a year. He'd go one place and then the next, etc. And he married the grandniece, I can't remember now, of Henry James and William James. So she's not any old James. She's the James, right? And by the way, they had a lifelong, apparently very good marriage, although she looks depressed in a lot of photographs, but okay. I mean, what can you do about that? And maybe she wasn't. Maybe she was deliriously happy. But that's just something I noticed in photos. She looked pretty happy there. At any rate, a very interesting figure. And the serious artists in Paris despite the fact that the circus was fun, Calder Circus, he was taken very seriously by Leger, Le Corbusier, Picasso, Duchamp. They really thought this was the great American figure. By the way, I just thought I'd give you a map of Litchfield County. Roxbury is here. The Calders were on Painter Hill Road in Roxbury. You'll be seeing many of these towns mentioned as I show you the scene as it develops. And one of the important points, I guess, to make about Alexander Calder is he was a party boy. He had fun. He knew everyone. He worked his tail off, and he partied. He partied hardy just as much as he worked hard, and people liked him. So once he was in Connecticut, as slowly over the course of the 1930s, Europe is looking darker and darker. And remember, I mean, not that we were there necessarily, but that Hitler comes to power. No, we start with Mussolini. Mussolini's in power in 1922. 1922! I mean, he's in power for decades. Hitler comes to power in 33. Franco comes to power by 38. The fact of the matter is things are pretty dark by the end of the 30s. And over the course of the 30s, some earlier like Calder, some later like others, Europe starts to empty out of those artists who either want to get out, can get out, or simply many of whom are Americans to begin with and have been living in Europe. And now there's a good reason for them to come to the United States. And where did many of them end up going? They go to Connecticut because of Sandy Calder. It was the personal connection to Sandy Calder that meant so much to people. By the way, this is at the house of the collector, critic, historian, James Thrall Sobey, who was a very important figure for the Museum of Modern Art. There is Calder, who liked to dance, dancing. That's his wife playing the accordion. And who's he dancing with? Did I say who he's dancing with here? Oh, that's Margaret French. Well, okay. Okay. For another lecture. What did artistically coming to Connecticut was a tremendous thing for Calder. Let me keep the 6:55. What time did I start? Any idea about when we started? Did we start at 35? I've already done 20 minutes. Okay. Got to keep moving. Calder finds, you might say, suddenly he owns a piece of land, good sized piece of land. He can work out of doors. I don't know if you know this, but of course, Calder is famous for his mobiles and his sculpture that moves. What an extraordinary idea. I mean, sculpture is supposed to be static, right? Since time immemorial. Brilliant idea. But all of his sculpture before Connecticut was motorized. I don't know if you know that, but his early sculpture is all motorized. It was Connecticut that he thought, wind. Oh, this is kind of nice. A very different kind of movement. Obviously, mechanical movement has one quality, and that slow, subtle, rather beautiful movement of air is what he came to much prefer to the mechanical movement that he had been making use of. So one of the key things that happens to Calder in Connecticut is that he works out of doors and allows his works to move around. The scale of his work increases tenfold. He'd never made anything this big. I mean, not even close to this big. He's working on a very big scale. So it's really salutary for his practice altogether. And when you see these shots, this is my show, my Connecticut Modern show that I did at the Bruce, I told you a couple of years ago. Anyway, there he is standing outside. Eventually, he becomes so central to the art scene, not just in Connecticut, but the art scene in New York as well, that everybody who is anybody connected to the avant-garde art scene wants to go up to Roxbury and meet Calder and see his work and his family, etc. And what he would do is he would create these little maps to his house to tell you exactly how to get there. The one on the left, his name will come up again momentarily, is Marcel Breuer, the great architect. And at the right, Ben Shahn. There's a Ben Shahn show on in New York right now at the Jewish Museum. It's a great show. Highly politicized artist from the 30s, 40s, 50s. Very good. Anyway, both of those people go to visit Alexander Calder, and he sends these personalized maps, which interestingly look kind of like Calder's sculptures, right? Wonderful. He doesn't waste a moment. He's all in all the time. I mean, God knows how he could do it all, but he could. And the Parisians, as I say, who need to get out to or want to get out of France start gathering at his place in Roxbury. And among those is the surrealist painter André Masson and his wife, Rose. And you can see here's a photograph hanging out with Calder. The Massons go to visit Calder in Roxbury, and then they decide, why don't we get a place in Connecticut too? Masson did not speak any English at all. At all. And he was in New York, excuse me. He was in New York too, but mostly in Connecticut for 2-3 years and never learned. Some people say he never learned a word of English, but he was hanging out with Alexander Calder and Sandy and Louisa Calder. He finds Connecticut quite inspirational for his surrealist art. Here's a drawing by André Masson. Here's a painting. This is owned by the Museum of Modern Art, known as Meditation on an Oak Leaf. And there is, in fact, let's see if I can make this thing work. Is it working? There is actually, it's hard to make out, there's a meditating figure leaned over a page here. It's hard to make out. You see a silhouette. And this is a kind of his dream imagery. As he meditates on this oak leaf, this is the dream imagery that emerges. And this is surrealism. And even if I don't go through all of it, most of you are probably aware that surrealism is based on Freudian psychoanalytic ideas. So we're not surprised when we see dream imagery, etc. Okay. Here's what André Masson had to say about the work and about his experience in Connecticut. In New England, there are oak trees 3 times larger than in France. The leaves also, the weeds are 3 times larger too, and the insects are gigantic. For there is an astonishing fauna, and it remains very wild, just 250 kilometers from New York. So I put a wildcat, that's at the top of the painting, in my painting. Is any of this true? No. Oh, I've lived in France. No, the oak trees are big in France, and the insects are the same. But it's one of these things that happens when you travel and you get excited and you're imagining you're seeing something. Maybe he was just so thrilled to be in the United States and not to be worried about what would happen to himself and his family in France, that everything got magnified. But anyway, that's André Masson. And he and his wife lived in New Preston. Then there is the figure, let me see, oh yeah, I did miss it. Wait a second, I can't do that. Then there are Yves Tanguy. I don't know how many of you know who Yves Tanguy is, a surrealist painter, French surrealist painter, and his wife, Kay Sade, who at the time was still known as, and apparently she kept the title, she was, for whatever reason, was allowed to keep the title. She was also the Princess San Faustino, the Principessa, excuse me, Mimetta, that my Italian is non-existent. But at any rate, she actually married an Italian prince. She's a well-to-do gal from Albany, New York. By the way, she's going to come up in a few other contexts. You'll see it shortly. She meets Yves Tanguy in Paris, and then when France is on the verge of being occupied by the Nazis, she and he both escaped to New York. So she's coming back home. She's lived most of her life in Europe. She did not grow up in the States, very little. She mostly grew up in Europe. But now she's going to have an American life, and she does. And they moved to Connecticut, and I love this photograph because they're in front of a poultry truck. I mean, like that sounds kind of Connecticut to me. Chickens and all the rest. There they are outside. Both of them are artists. This is a picture owned by the Guggenheim. And here is what Yves Tanguy has to say. I also have a feeling of greater space here, more room. Again, a little bit like Masson. But here in the United States, the only change I can distinguish in my work is possibly in my palette, which means his colors, right? What the cause is of this intensification of color, I can't say, but I do recognize a considerable change. Perhaps it is due to the light. And it's true that light is different in different places. I certainly know when I get out a plane in California, for instance, especially, I can see that the light is different. The light is much more golden in California. It's much warmer light. The East Coast has a much more silvery light. Uh, is the light different in Connecticut than in France? I've lived in both places. I don't know, maybe. But at any rate, if that's what the artist is feeling, that can be an exciting way to think about what's happening. Anyway, he's being asked by an interviewer, how has America influenced your art? So this is what he comes up with. He probably thinks he's got to have an answer too, right? Anyway, of course, he says there is a Paris one always misses. Still, Woodbury suits me perfectly. He adjusts. Kay Sage had never made as much good art as she makes when she gets to Connecticut. Why is that so? I don't know. Maybe there's something about being, even if she's been brought up in Europe, maybe there's something about being back home that's reassuring to her. She's really quite a wonderful artist. I would say the Kay Sage interest has really grown in the last 10 years. Really, not surprising, right? As feminism happened, Linda Nochlin, etc. Interest in Kay Sage has increased, and she's a very good artist. And I had beautiful examples of her work in the show at the Bruce, the Connecticut Modern Show. Here's a collage by her. Here's a very funny painting at the Mattituck Museum in Waterbury, where she left much of her art, which is not that far from Woodbury, where she and Yves Tanguy lived. And it's altogether strange, right? Corbeau à gauche, right? The crow at the left, huh? What? Huh? It's a little painting with a great big kind of, I don't know, is that a crow's wing? Some big piece of wood, kind of trapezoidal shape. This is a detail of the part at the right, which is about yay big. It's a small painting and then a great big piece extending off it. But she is, very much a surrealist painter, right? This kind of psychoanalytic, life of the mind painter as well. There was a very big scene around, just as there was at Pebbles. There was a big scene around the Kay Sage and Yves Tanguy house, as there was around the Calder house, by the way. And let's keep in mind that the scene at Pebbles is also Paris coming to America and Paris coming to Connecticut. It's a similar movement. Only a few people kind of overlap with the avant-garde art scene and Natalie Paley's scene. But she was good friends with Pavel Chalachev and Charles-Henri Ford. They also were part of the avant-garde scene in the rest of Connecticut, just by the way. Anyway, here's a photograph I always like with some of the key players in from the Parisian avant-garde that are now in New York, including Marcel Duchamp. By the way, Frederick Kiesler is an architect who you may have heard of Peggy Guggenheim's Art of the Century Gallery that was on 57th Street. And Kiesler designed that space for her. And I because I did that show at the Peggy Guggenheim collection in Venice recently, I got a little more steeped in Peggy lore, as it were, and it was very interesting to hear about. At any rate, clearly having fun, and the Chilean painter Roberto Mata said, for all of us, the country during those years was Connecticut, where we spent weekends with Calder, Masson, David Hare, you'll hear about him shortly, Arshil Gorky. They all lived a few miles from one another, and I always ended up for cocktails at the Tongis. So lots of scenes in a way comparable to Pebbles. Okay. One of these nice days, as it were, at the Calders, and including in attendance is André Breton. That's Breton here. Sorry, I'm not supposed to do that. Here's There it is. There is Breton here. Who invents the word surrealism, and he invents the movement. So the central figures of the Parisian avant-garde are in Connecticut. They're not in Paris during World War II. They are in this country, and specifically in Connecticut and of course New York as well. Anyway, lots of these interesting people gathered together, and then things get a little more complicated. By the way, this is a view inside the Sage Tanguy house, and because Kay Sage had a lot of money, they had a very beautiful house and a very beautiful homestead, and everybody comments on it. A lot of the artists, I mean, the Calders lived, it was great, but very rough and tumble environment. It was not rough and tumble at all at the Sage Tanguy homestead. And one of the reasons that Kay Sage and Yves Tanguy end up in Woodbury, Connecticut, is because Kay Sage's cousin, David Hare, already had a house in Roxbury, not very far from the Calders. And that's David Hare, an interesting sculptor, actually quite a good sculptor. By the way, I had that sculpture in my exhibition at the Bruce. Here he is in a photograph by Arnold Newman. That's the house. That's the house he owned in Roxbury. And he then lends his house to Arshile Gorky, the great, Armenian-American painter. Amazing painter, an amazing artist, a wonderful artist. And Gorky and his wife and kids are essentially renting David Hare's, or maybe he lent it to them. I'm not sure. But they're staying at David Hare's house. And it goes pretty well, and he's making wonderful drawings while there. And when I show you a drawing, it's usually something that was in my show. And by the way, here is a photograph of Arshile Gorky with his daughter Maro on his shoulders, with Andre Breton standing in the field outside David Hare's house in Roxbury. This photograph always makes me laugh. Arshile Gorky, in kind of a lumberjack shirt and kind of, grizzled, cigarette hanging out of his mouth, and Andre Breton looks like an 18th century French gentleman. I want to say, I don't think he ever used a shovel, a pitchfork in his life. I mean, pretty good. By the way, interesting anyway. But it was very exciting for Arshile Gorky to meet the man who invented surrealism. This was a thrill for him. This was he said, one of the great thrills of his life. Okay. Andre Breton, as I'm saying, is in the States during World War II. He's up in Connecticut hanging out at David Hare's house elsewhere. Here he is with his wife, Jacqueline Lamba. And then David Hare steals, or she did it on her own, Andre Breton's wife. Okay, so Kay Sage's cousin, who has the house, now Andre Breton, the big surrealism, comes to town, and suddenly Jacqueline Lamba leaves, the big shot of surrealism, and for this young American guy, it caused quite a bit of to-do in the art world and elsewhere. Among other things, Arshile Gorky had to get out of the house now because David Hare wanted the house back so he and Jacqueline could hang out there. So now here he is on a moving day. Arshile Gorky leaves the house in Roxbury, and he ends up moving into a house that is an old house that's being an old Connecticut house that's being made modern by an architect named Henry Hebeln, Hebbeln. There he is up there. That's that photograph that I began the session with. The Gorky family was not happy in this. I mean, the house looks beautiful, right? The Gorky family did not like it at all. They said it wasn't cozy. They didn't like the modern furniture. It's a modern artist, a great modern abstract artist. Does not like the modern design, doesn't like the slickness, doesn't like any of it, by the way. And I don't know how many of you are aware, Gorky has a series of tough things happening to him. And he ends up burning down the studio house of the Hebelns nearby, that he's working in, and then he finds out that his wife is having an affair with someone, and then he develops some kind of a cancer. I can't quite remember which it is, and at any rate, all that's happening. The house gets written up in Life magazine. It's a big deal, as you can see. What does it say? It says "Old house made new," right? I mean, what could be chicer than that, right? Take an old Connecticut house and make great plate glass windows, etc. None of this made Gorky happy. He was humiliated by this. You would think, wow, how exciting. He's a celebrity. That's not how he felt. And he felt the house and the architect got all the attention, and he wanted the attention for his art, not for the architecture. Okay, we got to get it. I went to see if I could find the house. I did. The photograph on the right is by me. I had to, of course, trespass, park my car like about half a mile down the road, and took my camera out and trespassed. That's 2 summers ago, by the way. So that's what it looks like from one side, by the way. And Gorky, I don't know how many, Gorky then hanged himself, not very far from that house. It's a famous, sad, terribly sad story in the history of the avant-garde, the annals of the avant-garde. He hanged himself at a house on this property of the Pebbles. And he is buried in the cemetery in Sherman, Connecticut. So I went to the cemetery to see if I can find the tomb, and that's it. Again, another photograph I took two summers ago, by the way. Back to David Hare and Kay Sage, cousins. That's not the whole story of how tight the scene is. Kay Sage and David Hare are also cousins of the wife of a guy named Chick Austin, who was director of the Wadsworth Atheneum in Hartford. So talk about having the whole kind of scene wrapped up in one extended family. Chick Austin marries the cousin. She is a what's that? It's the one of the big Hartford names. Do you know the big Hartford names? I'm forgetting the name. Is her name there? Oh, Goodwin. Yeah, she's a Goodwin. Very old Connecticut name. And so then there is that whole thing happening in Hartford. I don't know how many of you know the story of Chick Austin. He is 27 years old. Well, I bet Kate knows the story of Chick Austin. I bet, right? He is 27 years old when he is made director of the Wadsworth Atheneum, one of the most venerable museums with a great collection in the United States. And he had been part of this whole crowd. Anyway, I won't go through that. That's going to take too long. Anyway, he becomes head of the museum and turns the museum into a very modern place. It is a very traditional museum. I mean, among other things, they've got the Wallace Nutting collection of pilgrim furniture, which apparently Chick Austin could not stand. He said, I'm going to make my museum modern. He commissions a new wing, the Avery Wing, in international modern style. He does the first Picasso retrospective in the United States. This is all in the midst of the 1930s. He performs, he mounts Four Saints in Three Acts, the opera by Gertrude Stein and Virgil Thompson in 1934 with an all African American cast. Chick Austin, Mr. 27-year-old, is doing all of this in Hartford. It's really enough to make the rest of us who are not geniuses very depressed. Like, oh my God, really? My God. Alexander Calder makes sure to get himself very involved with Chick Austin. And he works with various projects on him. And this is a wonderful collage he made all about wanting to work with Chick again after he works on this great Hartford festival with Chick Austin. That's a collage that's owned by the Wadsworth Atheneum. And I'd like to say more about it, but I got to keep moving because we're really getting toward the end. I'm supposed to be at the end, right? You're not going to get architecture and design because I can see that I'm not going to have time. So I'm going to just get to the end of the art thing. I'll be there momentarily, I promise. By the way, just a few other people who are hanging out in Connecticut. By the way, all quite close to Pebbles. Did people visit each other at Pebbles? Maybe they did. I can't say they did not. There is Hilla Rebay. Some of you know her as the Baroness Hilla Rebay, first director of the Guggenheim Museum, close friend, if that's all it was, we don't know, of Solomon Guggenheim. She had a house in okay, oh yeah, no, I got it. Okay, enough with Hilary Bay, but she's a good painter, by the way. I had a beautiful painting by. Let me go back. I had a beautiful. No. Just let me. No, just once more to Hilla. A beautiful big painting. She wasn't just a museum director. She was also a very fine painter. I mean, imagine having two careers like that. Fantastic. I mean, some people can do it. No, not that. Then there is, and maybe I'll let this be the final artist I'll do it. Then there is Louise Bourgeois. Louise Bourgeois, the wonderful, most of you are aware of who she is, or some of you are aware of who she is, wonderful sculptor. Louise Bourgeois, a French woman, a Parisian. Her family had a textile shop right on the Boulevard Saint-Germain, near the de Magot, for those of you who know Saint-Germain quite well. She marries an American, an art historian named Robert Goldwater. And actually, there is Robert Goldwater in the back to the right. She and Robert Goldwater buy a house in Easton, Connecticut. There are their three sons standing alongside. This is interesting now. Now, she is a French woman who's arrived in New York, a French artist. She's aware of all the other French people. She meets all of them. She knows that Masson is in New York. She knows in Connecticut. She knows that Calder's there. She knows Marcel Duchamp's hanging around. She knows Andre Breton's hanging around. She knows all of them. And she does see them a good deal. But this is the most interesting part of it. That whole group made me violent, Bourgeois said, referring to the Surrealists, and specifically mentioning Max Ernst, who, by the way, at that point was married to Peggy Guggenheim, Max Ernst, Marcel Duchamp, Andre Breton, and Andre Masson. She nurtured an unmitigated animosity for Masson, who lived only 30 miles away in New Preston. Like Breton, she said, he only spoke French and expected to be looked after because he was famous. You may know that she's a great artist. She was a really tough cookie. And was not going to take this stuff from these guys who clearly put her down, and kind of did this to her. Always better with people who are going to do that to you to just do this to them. That's my way. Okay, you're over there, I'm over here. We'll just skip it. At any rate, I think she makes some wonderful Connecticut works, including some woodblock print and drawings of the inside of her house during World War II. She makes a wonderful painting called Connecticutiana, which was exhibited at, I think it was at the Met a couple of years ago in a small, very nice Louise Bourgeois show. It's now owned by Crystal Bridges. If you wonder where something is and you don't see it any longer on the walls of your favorite museum, it's at Crystal Bridges, because Alice Walton has all the money in the world. So anyway, it's got good taste too. And this is what Louise Bourgeois said about it. The grid is a very peaceful thing because nothing can go wrong. Everything is complete. There is no room for anxiety. Everything has a place. Everything is welcome. At any rate, it occurs to me, since I've been running long, there's all kinds of other nice things to tell you, but I won't tell you all the rest of them. But you might want to go to the Bruce website and buy the catalog. I mean, I have a book about it. So is the timing good? Kate, you tell me. I should keep going a bit? Oh, yes? Okay, good. By the way, among other interesting people who are in Connecticut is the dealer who you may be aware of, Edith Halpert. And she is in Connecticut in part because Charles Sheeler, some of you know who Sheeler is, photographer, very fine photographer and very fine painter, and collector with his wife of American antiques of various kinds, especially of the more kind of primitive type. That was their specialty. He ended up getting a house in Ridgefield and then went looking for houses for Edith Halpert. Some of you are aware of Halpert. She had a gallery in New York City. She represented a lot of very interesting artists. And probably, yeah, indeed she did. And one of the ways that she survived the Depression as a dealer was she was the one who scouted for Abby Aldrich Rockefeller's folk art. right, that end up in Williamsburg. That's all owing to Edith Halpert. And Halpert was close with Sheeler. And Sheeler makes this little painting of the house he finds for her. And it's like this big, guys. It's delicious. Again, if I'm showing it, it's because I had it in the show. It's still in the family of who are descendants of Halpert. But anyway, they very kindly lent it for the show. It was very nice. Sheeler himself actually goes on to make other paintings about Connecticut, lots of photographs, and even makes a kind of cubist version of Connecticut houses as well. This one owned by the Whitney Museum, called On a Connecticut Theme. By the way, something worth pointing out is that this chair, which is familiar to lots of you, it's a Hitchcock chair. Many of you have seen a Hitchcock chair. My mother was an antique dealer, and believe me, I sat on more Hitchcock chairs than I wanted to sit on growing up. But here's a Hitchcock chair, and it makes its way into a painting by an interesting American realist slash surrealist named Peter Blum. A very interesting figure. He's in Connecticut. He's one of the first people who moves to Connecticut in the early 1930s. And in this painting of his house that he makes in 1952, he includes a Hitchcock chair in his house. The Hitchcock chair was a modern object in the 19th century. It was a mass-produced chair. Now we think of it as folkloric and quaint and lovely. Mr. Hitchcock made his money by mass producing this chair. I think he produced, if I'm not mistaken, I don't want to get it wrong. Well, now I don't know if it's 1,500 chairs a week or 1,500 chairs a month. He produced a lot of chairs. And it's interesting to kind of see, and there's Peter Blum and his wife Ebby in their old Model T or whatever it is in Sherman in the early 30s. By the way, that's an Alexander Calder mobile, of course, in Peter Blum's house, because they're all visiting each other constantly and exchanging things. Wonderful world, at least for them. And by the way, I discovered, I didn't even know it, but when I went to that cemetery to find Gorky's tombstone, I found Peter Blum's tombstone and that of his wife as well. So that was, I mean, maybe that sounds morbid, but it was quite nice. A lovely summer afternoon. By the way, Sherman, Connecticut, I mean, at least that part of it seems unchanged since 1935. Like, Jesus, I guess. By the way, Western Connecticut, anybody have a house in Western Connecticut here? Oh, okay. Where are you? Okay, so there's no major highway running through Litchfield County. You got to do this, which is why so many people were killed drunk in their cars over the course of all those decades, including, by the way, Archibald Gorky had his neck broken when Julian Levy was driving him around that neighborhood. My point is that because there is no major highway that runs through Litchfield County, it's preserved. It's preserved. The minute you put the big road in, it all goes. But if there's no, I don't know if there's a road near you in Fairfield, but superhighways are great for getting places, but they're not so great for keeping things. Thoughts on that? No?
We have 95 that goes along Post, and then there's the Merritt Parkway.
Oh, that's true. Well, there's that. Yes. I was going to say, but then you'd have to do that. You can do the Merritt, or you can go up the Taconic. But in between, you really have to make your way. So it stayed very nice. Anyway, let me just say it's not the only great chair that comes from Connecticut. Some of you may know the Turner chair. Of course, I'd seen it. Half my friends have it in their dining room. I noticed that the remade Harvard Club, they have a new top floor at the Harvard Club. I didn't go to Harvard, but a friend who did took me there. And it's all Turner chairs. And actually, they're from Village Creek in Norwalk by a guy named Norman Turner. Interesting story. And by the way, the chair already was famous only a few years after he designed it, because Norman Rockwell put that chair on the cover of the Saturday Evening Post. Anyway, here's where the architecture and design would happen. I think I'm going to cut it here because it's just too much to explain to you. But I don't know, did you learn something? I know it sounds like a hodgepodge, but I hope you learned something and enjoyed the tour of Avant-Garde, Connecticut. Thank you. If you'd like to make a comment or ask a question, please feel free.
And we have a microphone. Please wait for the microphone.
Over there? You say you're from Fairfield? Is that what you said?
Yes.
Yes.
So I know
Okay, so
well.
you know Pebbles.
Yes.
Okay.
Is it on Sasko Hill?
What's that?
Was the house up on Sasko Hill?
You know, I don't know. I do know. I've never been to it. I know it's
Oh,
nearby. It's for sale, or it was for sale a few months ago. That picture I had of it, I saw online.
but is it right on because from Greenwich to Fairfield, it's called the Gold Coast, and it's just one estate after another right along the water.
Well, it's the water's like, I don't know. It looks to me like the water's 400 yards away, 300 yards away. So yeah.
Okay, so that's where, so it's probably up on Sasko
Okay.
Hill.
Yep.
Yeah.
Question, comment, sure.
So my question is just to get you to talk about design and architecture a little bit. So I think ending in 1947 is perfect to start thinking about Philip Johnson and Glass House. And I would love
okay.
to
Well,
know
okay.
what.
You're forcing me.
reasons
What
you
can I
have.
do? In Litchfield County, there's the Glass House, as you just said. By the way, anybody who wants to go see it, you can go. It's a town park in New Canaan. You can go see the Landiscore's Irwin Pool House. That's there. And this is a beautiful house. The Elliott Noyes house is still there. His son does tours every once in a while of it. It's just superb. And actually, at one time, they had a great big Calder sculpture in the interior of that house. But at some point, they sold it. Oh, anyway, then I had the end almost, but since I'm doing it, I did want to say it's not like people stopped making art in Connecticut in the early 50s or late 40s. I wanted to at some point I pointed out that, I don't know how many of you are aware of Barbara Chase Rebu, but she's still alive, a very good sculptor. Since she graduated from Yale, I felt I could include her in a Connecticut modern show. And by the way, here she is playing pool with Alexander Calder. I mean, come on, what else? There's no one he didn't know. And he is the reason Connecticut's important. I did find this collage in a show in Provincetown, by the way, guys. And before I did the show, but I'd never forgotten I'd seen it. And there, it's what? Oh, you can see it here. The return address is the drugstore, the old drugstore, the Greenwich drugstore on Greenwich Avenue. Long gone. It's like a Ralph Lauren or something now, but it used to be there in the old days. That they sent him his heart medicine during the summer to Provincetown. Some of you know that Helen Frankenthaler, who is now divorced by this point from Robert Motherwell, she also moves to Greenwich. Actually, she moves to Stanford, by the way, to Chopin Point. There she is. We had this great big painting by her in the show. Big, beautiful picture. You can see it in the back. That's the exhibition. And the very last picture we had in the show was this one. This is installing the painting. And some of you may recognize it as a Jasper Johns. And from the last I heard, he's still alive and still living in Sharon, Connecticut. Anyway, a photograph from 2018. Now that's the real end. Thank you. That's all the questions, answers. That's it. Okay. Go ahead. One more, and then I'll set you free. Oh, okay. Then ask me. Go ahead. Mhm.
So first of all, thank you for being here. Quick twofer. So I'm curious for Pebbles, when Natalie Paley moved away from it, like kind of what the status of the home is now. And then actually, so I guess this is three. And then third question is, so I love the presentation about the avant-garde in Connecticut at this time. Where would you say are some current centers of avant-garde art? If you can
What is it?
geographically-
Where are the current centers? Good. That's a good question. I almost want to say, where isn't it? Really, avant-garde art is being made all over the world now. And I've asked myself the same question. I don't know that there's any longer center. You know, there's a scene in Berlin for sure, and that's been there for about 30 years now. Of course, there's always some kind of a scene in New York. Paris, there hasn't been a scene for a very, very long time, but a little bit more lately. And then the question is the scene the artists who are working there, or nowadays is the scene the galleries and the museums, et cetera? So I'm not sure there is a place. As far as Pebbles go, I think the curator Wilford should answer any questions about Pebbles.
Wait for the mic.
So if I well remember the date, so the Natalie Paley and her husband, John C. Jack Wilson, sold Pebbles in 1957. And then, yeah, she was only in New York after that. But like after that, there were different owners until nowadays. So, yeah, 57.
Okay.
So technically, that was his home from the 30s. He went for a visit in the early 30s. In 34, I think is the first time she's recorded as a guest at Pebbles. And and they will only marry in 1937. And it's after, I mean, he was already using that place, her husband, as a place to gather all of his connection, you know, with the theater and the Broadway scene from New York. Where he was a producer. Yes. And then after that, when they married in 37, she brought all of her circles of photographer, fashion industry, and, you know, some of her artist friends. And that lasted until 57 when they sold it.
Was there questions you wanted me to answer from the Zoom?
There was one question from Zoom. Oh, hold on, let me pull it up.
Or maybe they zoomed away.
The question is, do you have any additional information on Maria Martins? Was she just visiting Connecticut or did she make sculptures there?
Good. By the way, guys, now that's a very sophisticated question. I hear the Duchampians all seem to know about Maria Martin. I don't. But I know that she is one of the kind of obsessive questions about Maria Martins that you hear around the Duchamp crowd is Maria Martins. I think she was Marcel Duchamp's lover, I think, and maybe also Enrico Donati's. And I have seen a few examples of her sculpture. What was the question? Was it something other than sculpture was the question?
They were asking, sorry, let me pull it up again. Just if you had any additional information on her, was she just visiting Connecticut or did she make sculptures there?
No, I don't think so. No, I have no record of her actually working in Connecticut. I think she's there like a lot of other people, hanging out for the weekend, hanging out at the Tongis, staying at somebody's house for the weekend. So I don't think so, no. By the way. Yes.
Jackson Pollock.
Okay, that's where was Jackson Pollock at this time? So you Zoom folks will hear it too. First of all, he's dead in that car accident in 56, whatever year it is. But he's in the Hamptons. So I will say that my show in some way was, I mean, the Hamptons is fine, but awfully busy, but fine. Awfully busy, but fine. My show in a way was the anti-Hamptons show. It was, in fact, I was kind of wanting to say Connecticut was a bigger deal than the Hamptons. Like more artists, more going on, more excitement. So thank you for that. I could have planted you in the audience. Yes, Jackson Pollock is out there and William de Kooning is out there. And then eventually Roy Lichtenstein later on, Andy Warhol's in Montauk, etc. But arguably there's a much more cohesive moment in Connecticut with all of this going on. There's nothing quite comparable, I don't believe, in the Hamptons, even though, anyway, that's all. Okay, I think we can let you go. Thanks, everybody.